The new student. The classroom smelled faintly of ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. Rows of curved seats rose in tiers, each filled with alien shapes, scaled, feathered, furred, or glistening with damp skin. The walls pulsed softly with blue light, a calming design chosen by the Galactic Peace Program. On most days it worked. Today, nothing could calm the room. The door at the back slid open with a sharp hiss. Every head turned. A figure stepped in. He was taller than most, his frame lean but solid, no visible weapons, no armor. Just a simple gray academy uniform that somehow looked sharper on him than it did on anyone else. His hair was dark, cut short. His skin was tanned, his eyes sharp and steady. They were human eyes. And for many in the room, that was enough to make their hearts beat faster. Humans were rare here, not because they couldn't travel, but because most species avoided them. A Deathworld species, the galaxy called them, raised on a planet of storms, predators, and diseases that would kill other beings in minutes. Dangerous, unpredictable, too used to surviving things that should have killed them. The teacher, a thin, long-necked Moravian, cleared his throat. "Class," he said, his voice soft but careful. "This is Kyle. He comes to us from the human colonies. He will join our curriculum on xenopolitical strategy and survival." Some students leaned back in their seats, studying him as if he were a dangerous specimen in a cage. Others whispered. Kale said nothing, only scanning the room with calm, unreadable eyes. The door hissed again. This time the air seemed to grow heavier. A second figure stepped in, but unlike Kale, this one carried his reputation like a weapon. His skin was dark bronze, ridged with scars. His shoulders were huge, his arms corded with muscle beneath armor plates. His eyes glowed faintly yellow, and his mouth curled into something between a grin and a snarl. Two small tusks jutted from his lower jaw. Gasps rippled through the room. A name passed from mouth to mouth like poison. Korvek. Even Kale had heard the name. A killer from the Zorak war tribes, a creature born for combat, raised in bloodsport arenas, known for tearing apart 6 armed guards during a prison transfer. No one knew why he was here, but every student could guess. The Galactic Peace Program sometimes rehabilitated the worst offenders by forcing them into learning environments with other species. It almost never worked. The teacher's voice shook slightly. Korvek will also join our program for social integration training. Integration. The word felt wrong in the air. Everyone knew Kor's kind didn't integrate, they dominated. Kor's gaze swept the room, searching for weakness. His eyes landed on Kale. He tilted his head as if measuring him. Kale met his eyes and smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile. It wasn't friendly either. It was a calm, steady curve of the lips, like someone acknowledging a challenge before it had even begun. Kor's nostrils flared. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. The teacher quickly gestured for both new students to take seats. Kor chose the far corner, where no one could sit behind him. Kyle took the center row, not far from the killer, but not close enough to seem like he was pushing. The whole room felt like a stretched wire ready to snap. Class began. The topic was resource distribution in multi-species colonies, but no one cared. Every student's attention kept drifting between Kale and Kor. The killer's heavy gaze sometimes slid toward the human. The human's calm smile appeared once or twice more, always in those moments. When the session ended, most students left quickly, as if the air itself had become dangerous. Kale rose slowly, slinging his satchel over one shoulder. As he stepped into the hallway, a voice, low and rough, came from behind him. "You think you're not afraid," Kor said. His words were not a question. Kale turned, meeting the yellow glow of the Zorak's eyes. "If I was," he said simply, "you'd smell it." For the first time, Kor's grin faltered. Kale walked away, leaving the killer standing in the hall watching him go. That night, whispers spread through the dormitories. "Did you see the human?" He smiled at Korvek. "He's either fearless or insane." No one knew which was more dangerous. But Kyle knew one thing as he sat on his narrow bunk. staring at the ceiling. The smile wasn't for Core. It was for the game that had just begun. Whispers and warnings. By the second day, the classroom felt different. No one laughed. No one chatted while waiting for the teacher. The alien students sat in tight groups, speaking in low voices, their eyes flicking between two seats. One in the center row, where the human sat quietly, and one in the far corner, where the killer leaned back with arms crossed. Korvek had not said much during the first lesson, but everyone knew his silence was never peace. It was the silence of a predator who had not yet chosen when to strike. Kael, the human, sat straight, listening to the lesson as if nothing around him was dangerous. He took notes with slow, neat handwriting. Every so often his gaze drifted, and it always landed on Core. Not for long, just enough to show he was aware. Some students thought Kael was stupid for not looking away. Others thought maybe he was looking for trouble. During the midday break, Kael carried his food tray to a small table in the corner. He had barely taken his first bite when a shadow fell over him. It was Nivra, a thin insectoid student with glassy black eyes and a trembling voice. She leaned closer and whispered, "Do you know who he is?" Kael looked up, his face calm. "I've heard the name." "He's not here to learn," Nivra said, glancing over her shoulder toward Core, who sat alone across the hall, his large hands tearing bread like it was soft cloth. "He's here because no one else would take him. The last place ended in blood." Kael kept chewing slowly, as if the warning was a weather report. "And yet he's here." "That's why you should stay away," Nivra hissed. "The teachers won't protect you. If he decides you're a target, you'll be gone before anyone moves." Kael finished his food, set the fork down, and wiped his hands. "Then I guess I'll have to make sure he doesn't decide that." Nivra stared at him, unsure if he was joking. That afternoon, during a lecture on planetary survival strategies, the teacher assigned a short exercise. 2 students would work together to design a shelter plan for a hostile world. Everyone began shifting in their seats, glancing nervously toward the far corner. When the pairings appeared on the hollow board, a ripple of shock went through the class. Kael, Korvek. The teacher froze for half a second, then cleared his throat. "The computer assigns pairs randomly," he said quickly. "We will see how it goes." Across the room, Core was already smiling, not in a friendly way. As the rest of the class began working, Core walked slowly to Kael's desk, each step a heavy thud. He stopped close, his shadow falling over the human's notes. "You're smaller than I thought," Core said in a low growl. "And slower, I bet." Kael looked up, unblinking. "Try me." Core's grin widened, showing sharp teeth. "Not yet. First, I want to know why you keep smiling at me. Are you stupid, or are you trying to provoke me?" Kael leaned back in his chair, speaking as if it was casual conversation. "You want to know why I smile? Because I like to see who notices, and who can't stop thinking about it." For the first time, Core's smile slipped, just for a heartbeat. Then he leaned in closer, his corsi, breath hot and metallic. "Careful, human. Some games end with someone's blood on the floor." Kael's reply was a soft, steady whisper. "I know. That's why I always choose the floor." Core stared at him for a long second, then straightened and walked back to his seat. The other students pretended to work, but their ears were tuned to every word. That night, as Kael walked back to his dorm wing, he noticed movement in the hallway's far shadows. A pair of reptilian students stood there, blocking the path. They weren't here for small talk. One of them, taller and bulkier, spoke in a deep voice. "The killer's watching you, human. If you want to live long here, you disappear. Stop smiling. Stop looking at him." Kael walked between them without stopping. "I'll keep that in mind," he said calmly. As he turned the corner, his eyes caught a faint reflection in the window. Core standing at the far end of the hall, watching. The first test. The next morning, the Academy's training hall smelled of metal and sweat. It was a vast circular space with high ceilings, lined with racks of practice weapons and hollow targets. The floor was marked with wide rings, each ready for sparring matches. Kyle walked in quietly, scanning the room. Korvek was already there, standing near a rack of heavy staff weapons, his thick arms crossed. He wasn't looking at Kale, but Kale could feel the attention anyway, like the way a predator notices every sound in its territory. The alien instructor, a tall, silver-skinned being named Var, clapped his clawed hands. Today, we test your adaptability in combat. No lethal strikes, no serious injuries, unless you fail to protect yourself. That last part was not a joke. Everyone knew that training accidents in the academy sometimes looked too much like duels. Pairs were called at random. The tension in the room rose with each name. When the instructor's voice finally rang out, Kale Human, Korvek, Zorak. The sound of collective gasps filled the air. Some students leaned forward, their eyes wide. Others looked away, unwilling to watch what they assumed would be a brutal ending. Kale stepped into the ring with measured steps. Kor followed, his boots striking the floor like war drums. Rules are simple, Var said. Defend, attack, adapt. You fight until I call the stop. The moment the signal flashed, Kor moved. He didn't walk. He lunged, his speed shocking for his size. His massive hand shot out toward Kale's throat. Kale didn't block. He moved aside, letting the grab miss by a finger's width. His face was calm, his breathing steady. Kor came again, faster this time, claws raking the air where Kale's head had been. Kale stepped back, pivoted, and let Kor's momentum carry him past. No strikes, no retaliation, just perfect timing and space. The watching students were confused. They expected Kale to at least hit back once. Instead, he seemed to be waiting. Kor's attacks grew heavier, sharper. Each one could have ended a smaller opponent. Kale flowed around them like water slipping past stone. Not a scratch touched him. Frustration began to creep into Kor's face. His growls grew louder, his movements more reckless. At one point, he slammed his palm against the floor, sending a sharp crack through the ring. The sound echoed, but Kyle only stood a few steps away, breathing evenly. You're mocking me, Kor snarled. Kale tilted his head slightly. I'm studying you. That reply hit harder than a punch. Kor charged again, but this time Kale moved differently. He didn't retreat. He stepped inside the attack, his shoulder brushing Kor's chest, his hand lightly tapping the killer's wrist. Not striking, but shifting the angle just enough that the blow missed entirely. It was controlled, surgical, precise. The match lasted another minute before the instructor's voice cut in. Stop. Kor froze, chest heaving. Kyle stood with the same calm stance as when they began. Not a single bruise marked him. The room was silent. Even the usual hum of machinery seemed quieter. Kor stepped closer, his breath still ragged. You could have hit me. Kale's voice was low but steady. I could have done a lot of things. For a moment they simply looked at each other, one with the pride of a predator, the other with the patience of someone who had seen worse. Kor turned away first. When they left the ring, the other students didn't know what to think. Some thought Kale had been lucky. Others began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the human was far more dangerous than he looked. The message in the shadows. The academy always looked different at night. In daylight, the glass walls shone with silver light, and the halls buzzed with the sounds of hundreds of species moving to classes. But when darkness fell over the floating city, the corridors grew quiet and cold. Only the faint hum of security drones broke the silence. Kyle moved like a shadow down one of the empty side halls. He wore no shoes, each step silent on the smooth floor. He wasn't wandering. He was following. He had noticed it 3 nights in a row. The same pattern. Korvek would leave the dorm wing long after curfew, heading toward the industrial quarter of the city station. And every night, he returned just before morning. Tonight, Kyle decided to see where the killer went. From a distance, he watched Kor's broad figure pass under the cold blue glow of corridor lights. The Zorak didn't hurry, but he moved with a confidence that came from knowing few dared to challenge him. His heavy boots made a slow, steady rhythm on the floor. Kale kept to the shadows, blending with door recesses and ventilation shafts. He timed his movements between the sweeps of security drones. His face was expressionless, but his mind was awake and alert, memorizing every turn Core took. The corridors grew darker as they reached the outer sectors. This part of the station was quieter, smelling faintly of burnt metal and chemical air. The walls were streaked with repair scars, the lights flickered more often. Finally, Core stopped beside a large maintenance hatch. He tapped a sequence into the panel. Too quick for most eyes to follow, but Kale caught the rhythm. The hatch slid open with a groan, revealing a narrow stairwell leading down. Kale waited 5 heartbeats, then slipped in after him. The air below was cooler and smelled faintly of oil. Somewhere deep in the metal belly of the station, Kale heard muffled voices. He crouched at the edge of the shadows and listened. Core was speaking to someone, a tall, hooded alien with pale hands. The voice was low and urgent. "It's ready," Core said. "All I need is the final signal." The hooded figure handed him a small metal case, no larger than a human palm. Kale's eyes narrowed. It was a military-grade data capsule. "You'll know when to act," the figure said. "And remember, no witnesses." Kale's expression didn't change, but his heartbeat slowed, steady and measured. He understood now. Core wasn't here for rehabilitation. He was here for a mission, and whatever was inside that capsule was dangerous enough to risk breaking galactic law. As the meeting ended, Kale slid back into the shadows, retreating the way he came. But before he could reach the stairwell, a voice stopped him. "You follow quietly," Core said from the darkness ahead. Kale turned slowly. Core stepped forward, eyes glowing faint yellow in the dim light. His hand rested near the hilt of a combat blade strapped to his thigh. "Most people who try to trail me," Core continued, "don't walk away. Why are you still here?" Kale met his gaze without flinching. "Because you're not here for class, and I want to know why." Core studied him for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. Then his grin returned, sharp and cold. "You don't know who you're smiling at, human," he said. Kale's reply was quiet. "And you don't know why I'm still smiling." For a moment they stood in the flickering half-light, 2 predators measuring each other. Then Core stepped aside, letting Kale pass. Kale walked up the stairwell without looking back, but he could feel Core's eyes following him the whole way. The trap. The morning began like any other, until the lights went red. Kale was halfway to his first class when the sharp wail of the security siren echoed through the academy. Metal shutters slammed down over the windows. Hallway gates clanged shut, sealing passageways. Overhead, the calm, automated voice of the station's AI repeated the same message. "Lockdown initiated, target identified, eliminate on sight." Students froze where they stood. Some crouched behind benches. Others darted toward safe rooms. But Kyle didn't move. He stood in the middle of the corridor, eyes narrowing. He knew immediately the target wasn't Core, it was him. The whir of machinery grew louder. Down the hall, a squad of armed security drones rolled in, their sensors sweeping. Behind them, 2 alien guards in black armor carried plasma rifles set to lethal. "Human Kale," one of them barked. "Hands behind your head, now." Kale didn't answer. He turned his head slightly, scanning the shadows along the ceiling. He could feel eyes on him, not the drones, but something else, watching, waiting. The guard stepped forward, weapon raised. "Final warning." A deep voice cut through the tension. "Stand down." From a side corridor, Korvek emerged, his huge frame filling the narrow space. He walked straight toward Kyle, ignoring the drone's warning beeps. One of the guards snapped, "This is not your concern, Zorak." Kor grinned. "It is if you're about to kill my sparring partner." Before the guard could react, Kor moved. His hand shot out, seizing the nearest drone by its sensor head and crushing it with a metallic scream. Sparks flew. In that split second of chaos, Kale stepped forward, twisting the second drone's arm cannon offline before it could fire. Plasma bolts lit the hallway. The air smelled of burning metal. Kale dropped low, rolling behind a pillar as Kor used one of the drones like a shield, shoving it into the guards. They didn't speak during the fight. They didn't need to. Kale moved with precise, economical strikes, disabling weapons, tripping opponents, forcing them into Core's range. Core, in turn, fought like a living battering ram, tearing through armor and scattering the squad like leaves in a storm. When the last guard fell, Kale straightened, breathing evenly. His eyes went to the red warning lights still flashing overhead. "This isn't going to stop," he said. Core tossed the crushed remains of a drone to the floor. "No," he replied. "And if you stay here, you're dead before the hour ends." Kale studied him for a moment. "So what's your offer?" Core's grin was humorless. "Come with me if you want to live." They moved quickly through the maintenance tunnels beneath the academy. The air here was damp and smelled faintly of coolant. Pipes rattled overhead as they passed. Kale kept his steps light, listening for the faint whine of tracking drones. "You know who's behind this?" Kale asked quietly. Core's voice was low but certain. "The Council. They don't like wild cards in their little game. I was supposed to test you. See if you were worth keeping. I guess they've decided you're not." Kale's expression didn't change, but his mind was already calculating. "Then why help me?" Core glanced back at him. "Because I don't like being used, and I want to know why they fear you enough to try this." Somewhere ahead, a loud metallic slam echoed. The sound of a heavy bulkhead ceiling. Footsteps followed. Kale's hand brushed the wall, finding a narrow maintenance hatch. "This way," he said. As they slipped inside, the corridor outside filled with the sharp light of search drones. Voices barked orders.
Inside the cramped maintenance passage, Core turned to Kale. "So tell me, human, why are you smiling in the middle of this?" Kale's eyes glinted in the dim light. "Because they still don't understand, they're not hunting prey. They've just opened the door for a predator." The flicker of surprise in Core's eyes was small, but it was there. And in that moment, the killer began to wonder if he had just chosen the wrong side, or the right one. Deathworlder's truth, the maintenance tunnel was narrow, the walls damp with condensation. Dim amber lights flickered every few meters, making the shadows dance on the curved metal. Kale moved first, his steps light, his posture relaxed, as if they weren't being hunted by an entire Academy security force. Core followed close behind, his heavy boots clanging softly on the grated floor. His massive frame barely fit between the walls. The quiet was unnatural for him. Usually, he would have filled it with threats or sharp questions. But now, he was watching Kale's back, and not just in the sense of guarding it. Finally, Core spoke. "You fight different." Kale glanced over his shoulder. "Different from what?" "From soldiers. From assassins. From predators. You don't waste motion. You don't push harder than you need to. It's like you already know what's coming." Kale didn't answer at first. He stopped at a junction, checked both paths, and chose the left one. The air here was warmer, humming faintly with the power lines running above. "I do know," Kale said at last. "Deathworlders have to." Core frowned. That word again. Everyone uses it like it's a curse. Like it's supposed to mean you're some kind of monster. Kale's voice stayed calm. "It means we're from a place no one else would survive." They walked on, Kale's tone quiet but steady. "My world's sky burns with storms that tear metal apart. The ground is home to Cray. Tours that can kill you in a heartbeat. Even the plants are dangerous, poisonous, sharp, or both. Every day, something tries to end you. And if nothing attacks, the weather will. There's no safe place. No warm corner where you can just live without looking over your shoulder." He glanced back at Core, his eyes steady. "We learn to see danger before it moves. We learn to move before the threat even reaches us. We learn that staying calm is the only thing that keeps you alive, because panic makes you slow, and slow gets you dead." Core didn't interrupt. His yellow eyes were fixed on Kale, and for once, there was no challenge in them, only interest. Kale continued. "When you've lived like that your whole life, fights like the ones here feel different. Slower. Cleaner. Predictable." Core gave a low laugh, though it held no mockery. So you're saying you've been smiling because none of this scares you? Kale shook his head. Not exactly. I smile because they think fear will control me. And when it doesn't, they don't know what to do. They reached a wide chamber deep in the station's underworks, a forgotten cargo bay, dust hanging in the stale air. The metal doors on the far side were sealed, but the room gave them a pause to breathe. Kor leaned against a wall, crossing his arms. The council sent me here to measure you. To see if you were worth keeping alive. That's all I knew. And now? Kale asked. Now, Kor said slowly, I think they made a mistake. Kale's gaze sharpened. Which part? Bringing you here, or bringing me? Kor's tusked grin returned, but softer this time. Both. Before Kale could reply, a metallic bang echoed from the tunnel they had just left. Shadows shifted in the doorway. The hum of approaching drones grew louder. Kale didn't move for the hatch or reach for a weapon. He simply looked at Kor. This isn't about surviving the NE. 10 minutes. This is about ending it so they don't come again. Kor tilted his head. And you have a plan for that? Kale's faint smile returned. I always have a plan.
The smiles end. The council chamber was built to intimidate. A wide circular room with a vaulted ceiling and walls of black alloy that reflected the faint glow of the central dais. From their high seats, the 7 alien counselors looked down at anyone brought before them, their shadows stretching like claws. Kyle and Kor walked in side by side. Neither was shackled. Neither was escorted. The guards who had tried to stop them in the corridors now lay unconscious or worse, far behind. A low murmur spread among the counselors. The one in the center, a tall, silver-skinned dreamer with eyes like polished steel, rose to speak. You were ordered to be eliminated, human. Instead, you bring our Zorak operative into our chamber. Explain yourself. Kale's voice was calm, almost conversational. You sent a killer to test me. You sent drones to erase me. You failed at both. I think the explanation is yours to give. The Drever's gaze narrowed. You are dangerous. You destabilize order. And you... His eyes flicked to Kor. You were supposed to end him, not follow him. Kor's deep laugh echoed in the chamber. Plans change. The counselors began speaking over one another, some demanding Kael's immediate execution, others warning of political fallout if a human Deathworlder was killed without cause. Kael stood still, letting them argue, his faint smile never fading. Finally, one counselor barked, Why are you smiling, human? Kael's eyes swept the chamber. Because you've already lost, you just don't know it yet. He lifted a small device from his pocket. The same military-grade data capsule Kor had been given in the shadows nights ago. With a flick of his wrist, he set it on the floor and tapped it. A holographic projection flared into the air, footage of the Council's own private orders, the assassination directive against Kael, the covert use of Kor for off-record operations, and the manipulation of the Academy as a cover for political executions. The room went silent. You forget, Kael said, his voice still quiet, that Deathworlders survive by paying attention. You wanted to study me. I've been studying you. One counselor surged to his feet. Seize them! The guards moved, but Kor moved faster. In 2 long strides, he blocked the path, his massive hands seizing the first 2 attackers and slamming them against the wall. The rest hesitated, seeing the look in his eyes. Kael stepped forward onto the dais, his boots ringing on the polished floor. You can try to kill me again, he said, but now the galaxy will know why. This capsule is already transmitting to the Galactic Network. Your secrets are no longer yours. The Drevar counselor's face went pale. You think this will save you? Kael's smile finally shifted. No longer faint, no longer patient. It became something sharper. No, this isn't about saving me. It's about making sure you never hunt me again. For a long moment no one spoke. The hum of the hologram was the only sound. Then slowly, Kor turned toward Kael. So what now? KL looked around the chamber, taking in the frozen faces of the council. Now, he said, we walk out. And they did. Not a single guard moved to stop them. In the corridors beyond, the academy felt different. The whispers had already begun. Students passing fragments of the story, piecing together the truth. Some watched the human and the Zorak pass, fear in their eyes. Others, something closer to respect. Kor broke the silence as they reached the outer gates. You know, he said, you're still smiling. KL glanced at him. That's because the game's not over. It's just moved to a bigger board. And without another word, they stepped into the light beyond the gates. Two predators walking together into whatever came next.